This week's WWE Raw highlighted what is, I continue to say, a loaded main event scene on the Raw brand right now, as you had lots of different segments, interactions with the top stars. Drew McIntyre made his return last week. CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, all these guys continue to be intertwined here as we head towards not just Saturday night's main event, but the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania 41 season. That's what really stood out on this week's edition of Raw. You had some other notable developments, especially a significant change in the World Heavyweight Championship match for Saturday night's main event, plus some other stuff with the women's side of things, and the crowd booed some of their former favorites, and boy, did they boo them. We'll get to that in just a minute, but I keep telling you guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Lots of videos coming here daily at Wrestling Reaction, heading into the biggest time of year for WWE. We head towards Royal Rumble season and WrestleMania 41, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. Lots of fun videos on the way. Just as a heads up, this is the second time I'm recording this video this morning, so hopefully it's just as good as the first time. You're not going to see that version because I had some issues with my recording platform with not having any audio. So you could have perhaps tried to guess what I was going to say about certain things on Raw, but instead, hopefully you can actually hear it now because there were, again, some very, I think, significant things that took place on this show. The biggest of all, maybe, is what's going to be the future direction for Seth Rollins, because Seth was kind of a main figure on this particular show, as he had a couple different, interactions here that I thought were interesting. One came indirectly, as it was CM Punk having the sit-down interview pre-recorded in the back with Jackie Redmond, and it was Punk talking about how Seth Rollins, is still entitled. Brought up the story about 16-year-old Seth Rollins coming and wanting to get trained to be a wrestler and those kind of things, and how Punk, just continues to see Rollins as entitled. Punk calls Rollins the second stringer, right? The starter's back. It's time for the second stringer to go back to the bench. That's a burn from CM Punk to Seth Rollins. But you also had Rollins stating his case in front of the fans. And what does he do? Well, he calls CM Punk a fraud. Talks about how he's a politician, a con man, all these things, that the only reason that Punk came back to WWE was because he burned all of his bridges elsewhere. We know where that is. And because of the money. So Punk, is someone who Rollins is framing as, the victim here, right? Punk likes to play the victim game, and he walked out, many years ago from WWE. He didn't say a word to any of his friends. He didn't respond to any of Seth Rollins' messages or anything like that, because that's who CM Punk is. We keep saying on the SmackDown side of things, Kevin Owens keeps making some great points about Cody Rhodes, and they're sort of playing into the same dynamic here between Seth Rollins and CM Punk. They have history together, but it's not just the history they have on the screen, right? We know Punk brought in the Shield, all those things. We know Cody and Owens, have been friends. They've played up, them teaming together and all this, but it's what also happens off the screen. And I think the reality aspect of this is what Triple H has been so good at in building these top storylines, because we know there is a real history between CM Punk and Seth Rollins, and it goes all the way back, like we said, many years ago when Rollins was trying to get into professional wrestling. And we also know that whenever CM Punk made his return last year at Survivor Series, it was Seth Rollins who absolutely lost it, right? Those are the things that I think have continued to fuel this rivalry between the two. But what added to it here, I think, and does make it very clear what's maybe going to be next for Seth Rollins, was the crowd reaction. He's saying all these things about CM Punk, but the crowd's not ready to boo CM Punk just yet. They're chanting for CM Punk. They're not chanting for Seth Rollins. They're chanting for Punk. And just like I said, when you look at it from the standpoint of what Kevin Owens continues to say about Cody Rhodes and how Cody is sort of the chosen one, he came back, he's given all these opportunities, and yet Owens is the person who's been here all along as sort of the workhorse, right? Just like Rollins has. These are very similar dynamics, I think, in terms of how they're telling these storylines. And I think it's going to make for a situation where you could have Seth Rollins playing the Kevin Owens role at some point in the near future. Is that just a clear-cut heel turn for Seth Rollins? Is it more of that shades of gray type thing? Remains to be seen. But I do think that they are cooking up something very fun and fascinating with Seth Rollins, because I think he is someone who is making some great points, but at the same time, he's doing it against someone, just like Kevin Owens against Cody Rhodes, that people are still going to cheer in CM Punk. They still want CM Punk, and I think it's going to make for a great rivalry now as these two head towards a match at WrestleMania 41, which seems to be the clear direction at this point. I'm sure they'll somehow factor into the Royal Rumble. Maybe one costs the other, the opportunity at that World Championship, which we know they both want. And so it's all kind of coming together for this CM Punk versus Seth Rollins feud, which we knew we were going to get last year or this past year at WrestleMania 40 until the Punk got injured in the Royal Rumble. And so you had that, but you also had kind of the stuff with Rollins and Sami Zayn here, which I thought was once again a great segment between the two, where Rollins is like, he's almost heartbroken a bit. He's like, Sami, why would I be the first person you think of whenever Jey was attacked last week? And Sami's like, well, you were losing your mind, man. Everything you were saying and all this, like, I did wonder, were you the person, that could have done this? Of course, we got kind of our answer from Drew McIntyre, giving the reason why when he saw everyone kind of teaming up, being friends again at Survivor Series with the original bloodline, he decided to come back and set his sights on Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. And he's like, what was his reasoning for not just coming back and doing it to Punk? Well, he's like, at least Punk accepted a bribe, right? Talking about, the favor with the wise man Paul Heyman and all that. But I think to continue to see Seth Rollins asking these questions, why would you think I would do that? And I said last week, well, Seth Rollins has given us all the reason in the past to think why he would do that because of what he did to Roman Reigns many years ago, hitting him in the back with the chair, aligning himself eventually with the authority, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Seth Rollins has given us plenty of reasons to think that he would do something like that, right? And so I think they're doing, they're kind of walking that fine line with Seth Rollins right now. People are still going to cheer him, but because he is going up against CM Punk, that is his top rival now, you're going to have those interesting crowd reactions to where eventually I think you are going to be in a scenario where maybe Rollins has to snap just like Kevin Owens did. And I think that's going to make for probably even more compelling television week to week if that's the Rollins you're working with here, in this feud with CM Punk and beyond. So that was, again, kind of your main stuff here. All of these guys still finding ways to be connected. You would think that's going to continue through the Royal Rumble into WrestleMania 41 season. I've given my thoughts on what I think the matches are going to be, CM Punk and Seth Rollins. I think you're going to get Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn for the reasons we just mentioned, tie Sami into the same type of stuff in terms of former friends and reasons for wanting to sort of, hate each other now. And Drew McIntyre, he's going to get Sami Zayn. We know that match was announced for Saturday night's main event. What's McIntyre's role going to be at WrestleMania 41? What's Jey Uso's role going to be at WrestleMania 41? Like, these are all interesting questions because they have a lot of great stars to work with. Two big nights, as we know. So I think it's going to be fun to see, what kind of matches Triple H is going to put together for the biggest show of the year. But again, that was kind of where we left things with those guys on this particular show. The Raw main event scene cooking right now. Meanwhile, also in the Raw main event scene, we know is the World Heavyweight Champion, Gunther, who had a change to his match at Saturday night's main event, as it is going to be Damian Priest inserted into the match. It's going to be triple threat between Gunther, Damian Priest, and Finn Balor. And we know that's not going to make Balor happy. We saw his response to that after Adam Pearce revealed that it's going to be a triple threat match. Of course, they all three were involved with each other on the opening segment of the show. And Balor, I thought, had the great line here where he's like, telling Gunther, you're the reason, you retain the championship, or I'm the reason you retain the championship at Survivor Series. I'm going to be the reason you lose the championship at Saturday night's main event. So tying in that thread, but of course that was before we knew that Priest was going to be added to the mix. I think here, for a lot of people, we'll make our Saturday night's main event predictions coming up this week, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss those. But, look, do I think anyone really believes there's going to be a title change here? Probably not, but they are playing into, the idea that Gunther's confidence is still shaken a bit, and by adding another person into the match, statistically, from the odds standpoint, that puts Gunther at a disadvantage. And so I do think, it probably works better than just having Gunther versus Balor. Just like we said, if you go back to Survivor Series, there was no chance we thought that Priest had of winning that championship from Gunther in a one-on-one match. But now, having all three in there together, it does, again, increase some intrigue a little bit rather than it just being a one-on-one match, because I don't know how many people would have thought Balor was just going to beat, Gunther straight up one-on-one, even though he's played a factor, in multiple Gunther title matches we know over the past several months. So I'm fine with the addition there. I think it makes it probably for a more interesting match, but, we'll see if the result is still the same coming out of this. Speaking of Balor, we also know that, he's going to team up with JD McDonough to defend those tag team championships. Yes, they're actually going to defend them again coming up next week on Raw against the War Raiders. I've got to think there's probably going to be a title change there because I think that's a great transition into who I think is going to eventually be the new tag team champions, probably sooner rather than later. That's the New Day, who got, just an unbelievable reaction on this particular show from the crowd. We always talk about like WWE piping in crowd noise and all that, how they can make it sound how they want. But if you go look at some of just the raw footage, I guess pun intended, on social media, you can see people from the crowd, who have their cameras and they're recording the building, like just the boos for the New Day as Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods make their way out to try to explain themselves after what they did in one of the best segments I thought of the year of WWE last week with the turn on Big E that they had during the New Day's 10-year anniversary celebration. They got the exact reaction they wanted and probably a lot more. I mean, it was a Dominic Mysterio and beyond type reaction for Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods here. And, I thought they did a nice little thing setting it up, too, by having them interact with Cody Rhodes before they came out. Cody's in the back talking to Adam Pearce. It's transfer window season, everyone. We know that. So Cody is talking to Adam Pearce, and by having Cody, the top star, like the face of the company right now, right? By having him tell Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston that they should be ashamed of themselves, you're setting the crowd, you're priming the crowd, right, for what they need to do whenever Kofi and Xavier make their way out. So they come on out, and, Xavier Woods grabs the camera, all this other stuff. Tremendous reaction, and you would have to think all smiles backstage to get that kind of reaction coming off of last week's segment, and knowing that, it is always about the follow-up. And you also know that what's different with this one is that you're not going to have Big E coming out and being able to wrestle just to get his comeuppance, right? Or to give, Kofi and Xavier Woods their comeuppance. We just don't know if that's in the cards right now. But when he does eventually come back, and whatever role that is, it's only going to add to the heat for these guys right now. And so I just can't say enough about how good that segment was last week, and I thought the follow-up was perfect. You didn't have to go too far with this. You didn't have a 20-minute promo trying to explain themselves. You know why they did what they did, and you wanted to see how everyone was going to react. Everyone loves Big E. So the fact that you had Cody say those little things backstage, everyone's still thinking about what they did to Big E, perfect in terms of the reaction you got here. And I do think the New Day are probably going to be the team that takes those titles off the War Raiders if we do get the title change next week. So I think that seems to be where we're headed. But you can also now have the New Day. I think they are also considered a top act at this point, based just right after that heel turn and the reaction they got here. You can have them, interacting with a lot of these top tier stars too, on this brand. What about the New Day versus Jey Uso and Sami Zayn at some point? Like, these are the kind of things that I think, that you have to certainly factor in. And that's why they're doing so well right now, because everyone, in these kind of roles feels very important. And the New Day have catapulted towards the top of the list based on what they've done the past 2 weeks. But elsewhere on the show, the women's side of things, in the actual main event, it was Rhea Ripley defeating Raquel Rodriguez, and we knew there'd be some interference from Liv Morgan. There was. It's an anything-goes match, but, I thought fine match. Rhea getting the win, not surprising there. Io Sky getting involved, also not surprising to set up, the match we're going to get on Saturday, Liv Morgan versus Io Sky for the Women's World Heavyweight Championship. And so you kind of look at it from this standpoint now moving forward. We kept saying, right, this whole entire title picture has really just been contained to Rhea and Liv. Well, now that you have Io Sky challenging on Saturday, you also had the tease at the end. Triple H loves these, we know. Having the tease where Rhea picks up the title, Io's holding the title too. They're kind of staring at each other to, again, tease another possible match in the future. I think that's what you want. You want to get more people involved in this title picture because it has just been all about Rhea and Liv. I still think maybe that's the end game when all this is said and done, but it does add, more interest, I think, by having Io Sky get her title shot. How's that thing going to unfold at Saturday night's main event? And who else is going to kind of make their way into this picture, perhaps? We talked about, in another video this past week, Becky Lynch would seemingly be on her way back for the Raw and Netflix debut. So how does Becky get put back into the fold, perhaps, leading into WrestleMania 41 season? So I think that's what you want because, like I said, nothing against Rhea or Liv, but like they have just been so tied to each other here for so many months now that I think freshening it up a little bit, having Io and Rhea tease some stuff here, just like we saw on this Raw, maybe having Becky come back, teasing some, there's lots you can do now, with this particular group. So I think, heading in the right direction in that regard, and we will make our predictions for Liv versus Io Sky on Saturday night's main event. We'll have that coming up this week in another video. Speaking of Liv, she did get the win over Dakota Kai, who we know is advanced in the Women's United States title tournament. It looks like Damage Control is going to have their issues with the Pure Fusion Collective, who got involved there in that particular match. But speaking of also advancing, it was Lyra Valkyria beating Zelina Vega and Ivy Nile to advance in the Women's Intercontinental title tournament. So she is going to be in the mix now, as we know. And so I think, we got to still crown our champions for the first ever women's Intercontinental champion, women's United States champion. These are all, tournaments that are still in the works. We'll find out. Elsewhere on the show, the only other stuff kind of you had here was the Miz and the Final Testament defeated the Wyatt Sicks. I'm not surprised by that. I think some people may have been, but you knew this was not a feud that was going to be over probably right now. And so to further it a bit, having Paul Ellering return, throw the powder in the eyes of Uncle Howdy, give Karrion Kross a win. That's probably what you were going to do to kind of move this thing forward. And the Wyatt Sicks have been protected pretty well to this point. So I don't think them losing this match really changes things a whole lot, through nefarious means here from the heels. So yeah, this is going to continue, and I don't really, know exactly how this is going to play out, but we know this is going to continue to move forward here with that particular feud between those groups there. Also, it was announced afterwards, Braun Breaker versus Ludwig Kaiser is going to take place next week for the Intercontinental Championship, so that's a big match that's set. Again, we talk about top guys on the brand, right? Braun Breaker is a future top guy, if not already. Ludwig Kaiser is a future top guy, if not already. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, a stacked roster, and it's always how you utilize these guys. And they're doing such a great job of utilizing, their talents right now. They're playing to the strengths, and it's made for just very compelling television week to week. And I think it's only going to get better from here as they, kind of shuffle up these rosters a little bit and give some fresh matchups on each brand. So there you go. That was this week's edition of Raw. Like I said, lots of notable things coming out of it. And this main event scene, I think, is one worth watching week to week and just makes for a lot of fun interactions right now on this brand. But all right, guys, let me know your thoughts on this week's Raw. Always appreciate it. Drop them in the comments below. And again, hit that subscribe button. Lots of fun videos on the way. Saturday night's main event predictions and reaction coming. Also working on that top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time video. I think you guys are going to enjoy that one because I want to know what your top favorite wrestlers are of all time. But I'm going to give you mine and have some fun counting down my top 10 favorite wrestlers ever in WWE. So should be fun one on that. Hit that subscribe button again, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE Raw.